Welcome back to Fun Fright Friday. Again, I'm Miss Elissa, and I'm going to be reading you another story from Ghost, 13 Haunting Tales to Tell. And this one is called The Library, and it's written by Jesse Refson and illustrated by Jeff Turley. So again, we've got those awesome illustrations throughout. So we open with this illustration of the library. So we have our setting, the creepy older building. So this is the library. Meg Harvin had never been to the library. Not many people went these days. But her teacher had given the class the assignment to check out a book, an actual book, he had stressed. Paper, not zeros and ones. So here Meg was at the front desk waiting for help from the librarian. She had heard about this old woman. Everyone had. The children of the town did their best to stay clear of her, as they often did with people they found a bit off. The woman had been in charge of the town library for as long as anyone could remember, and that was saying a lot considering the building was almost as old as the town itself. However, nobody would suggest that she had been its librarian the entire time. But no one could imagine the library without the old woman, who was most often seen walking among the dusty shelves, tending the books. Meg had heard that she cared for them as if they were her own children. Let me guess, Mr. Morrissey's class? The librarian shuffled out from behind a stack, giving Meg a start. So she's coming out from all of these books. So, Mr. Morrissey's class? Yeah, I'm looking for a book. The woman winked. I know, it's been a whole rash of you just looking for books. Follow me. She turned and pushed deeper into the library's recesses. Meg gave a glance around the old building. It wasn't the most inviting place. Large and cavernous, it easily let in the drafty winter air from outside. The chill seemed undaunted by the fire that crackled in the large stone hearth. The space had been used for barracks during the Revolutionary War. It seemed to have kept the foreboding of a place intended to house those not long for the world. You coming? Meg looked up to find the woman staring at her from the steps that led to the library's lower level. Before Meg could answer, the librarian descended into the building's depths, her heels clicking on the worn stairs. Meg wondered why they couldn't just stick with the books on the main level. She sighed as she hurried to follow the woman down. The bottom level of the library was somehow even draftier than above, which Meg found puzzling since they were now underground. Green-shaped lamps lit the winding stacks of books, but Meg couldn't help feeling that the space would have been more at home in the flicker of dying candlelight. I call this the tomb, the librarian cut into her thoughts. Meg looked up nervously. You do? The librarian grinned and shook her head. No, I call it nonfiction. Meg smiled. The woman had picked up on her unease. Meg guessed it was kind of silly to be put off by a building. Sorry, this is my first time here. I wasn't expecting it to be so old. Meg nodded apologetically. The librarian smiled. You're a good one, I can tell. Lots of Morrissey's kids come through here, and they're not so nice. They don't respect things that are old. She turned to continue on through the shelves. Meg noticed, curiously, that the woman had a habit of reaching out to pat the books as she passed. It seemed she was very deliberate about the ones she touched, only those that protruded from the shelf, that were, for some reason, pushed forward. From the way they stuck out past the other books, it almost looked as if they were trying to escape. Some of the children that show up act as though I'm burdening them, as if being around books takes a toll. Do you believe that, sweetie? Meg was still thinking about the woman's odd habit of singling out books as she walked by. The whispers she'd heard seemed true. The way the old woman patted those books, it was as if she was comforting a child. Meg looked up to find the woman staring at her, waiting for a response. Sorry? Meg hazarded, not realizing she had been asked a question. Are you one of those children that doesn't like to spend time around books? The librarian began cracking her knuckles ominously as she waited for a response. So many books. Meg stared for a moment. The menace in the woman's voice was not lost upon her. Truthfully, she didn't especially care for books. But under the woman's intense stare, she began to notice an eerie silence hanging in the room, the kind you get when a room full of people are holding their breath. The hush was only punctuated by the periodic cracks from the woman's knuckles. Meg had a feeling there was just one answer that would be appropriate here. "I love books," she lied. The librarian eyed her a beat, then broke into an approving nod. "Like I said, you're one of the good ones." She continued on to another set of shelves. Can you imagine this stare looking out at you? Out of eyesight, Meg turned her attention to the books the woman had touched in passing. Meg pulled one off the shelf. The first thing that caught her attention was the leather that bound it. It was unlike any she had ever felt. Meg supposed it was from an animal not typically used for that purpose. Sheepskin? She also noticed that the title of the book was nowhere to be found, just a name, presumably the author, carved into the skin. Thomas Hawkins. Meg opened the book to find an engraved illustration inside. A heavy-lidded boy stared up at her, sorrowful and motionless on the page. Ah, Thomas. Meg looked up at the sound of the librarian's voice. She was standing beside her, staring at the illustration. After taking a moment to eye the thin black lines that comprised the boy, the woman smiled and pulled the book from Meg's hand. "You know what I found? When children spend enough time around books, even the worst ones seem to come around, in the end." With that, she closed the cover on the illustrated boy, whose eyes seemed still to stare out at Meg as the pages shut over him. The librarian put him back on the shelf. "Now follow me. That particular book isn't for you." The woman pushed on as Meg gave a backward glance toward the shelf she was leaving behind. She noticed that all the books the librarian had touched were bound in that same odd leather. As she turned to follow the woman, she couldn't help thinking back to the boy's pleading eyes as he was shut into darkness, trapped between the pages of the book. "Here you go, dear." The librarian had stopped at another shelf. "Architecture. Figured you might be interested to learn a little more about old buildings like this one?" Meg nodded. She was now firmly of the opinion that she didn't want to contradict the woman, even though a book about old architecture sounded frightfully boring. The woman smiled in satisfaction. She clapped her hands together. "I knew it." She handed over a book to Meg and led the way back towards the stairs, still unconsciously grazing her hands against the spines of the books that jutted out past their neighbors. Meg couldn't shake the feeling, even stronger now, that the books were straining to free themselves from the shelves that held them. Meg looked the books over as she followed the woman. Each read the same. No title, just a name cut deep into the odd leather. Book after book, name after name. Finally, her curiosity got the best of her, and she pulled another one of the heavy tomes down. She opened the book to find an illustration of a wisp of a girl. The girl had dark shadows under her eyes, and she almost appeared to be wailing as she stared out from her page. Meg stared back for a moment before closing the cover and putting the girl back on the shelf with just a tinge of fright. She walked farther and pulled another book down. A second girl peered out. Tears had traced streaks down her face. In another book, Meg could only see the back of a boy. He faced away as if made to stare at a wall in punishment. Another book held a boy curled into a terrified ball in the corner of the page. Each book she opened contained another child in despair. Finally, she came to the last book on the shelf. She stopped in surprise. It bore her own name, Meg Harvin. As she eyed the book apprehensively, The librarian's voice floated back in from the stairs. Meg, you are telling me the truth, yes? You truly do love books? Meg looked up, taken aback that the woman knew her name. She forced out a weak response. Of course. The woman nodded solemnly. Then there's no need for you to open that book. Come upstairs, we'll get you checked out. The woman disappeared, her heels clicking once more on the old stone steps. Meg turned to take a last look at the book that bore her name. She shivered in the chill air that gusted through the stacks. Finally, she turned and followed the librarian, leaving the book unopened. Behind her, there was the faintest rustle of pages, and then silence. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another fun Fright Friday and another story from Ghost 13 Haunting Tales to Tell. I highly recommend this book for probably about 9 to 12 years old. The stories kind of range in their spookiness, and they're a lot of fun, especially to read out loud. Some of them are in rhyme and some of them are in prose, and they have those beautiful illustrations throughout. All right, everybody, happy Halloween.